In a world where royal protocols dictate every handshake and formal greeting, sometimes the most genuine moments happen when nobody expects them. Picture this. Two of the world's most photographed people, surrounded by security teams and official schedules, suddenly find themselves completely captivated by a small, furry creature who has no idea about titles, crowns, or proper etiquette. This is the story of how a simple community visit in Lancashire turned into a viral sensation, not because of speeches or ribbon cuttings, but because of an adorable little dog who reminded everyone watching that beneath the royal titles, William and Kate are simply two people who can't resist a wagging tail and puppy dog eyes. What happens when royal duty meets pure, unscripted joy? When cameras catch a moment so genuine that it makes headlines around the world? When a small dog becomes the unlikely star of a royal visit, stealing hearts and proving that some connections transcend all boundaries? This is that story, a tale of unexpected encounters, community spirit, and the magical way animals can bring out the best in everyone, including future kings and queens. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the Lancashire countryside as Prince William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales, stepped out of their official vehicle. The small market town of Burnley buzzed with excitement, its narrow streets lined with Union Jack bunting and eager faces pressed against shop windows. Children clutched homemade signs while parents held smartphones high, hoping to catch a glimpse of the royal couple who had come to visit their community center. Catherine smoothed her navy blue coat dress, a choice that perfectly balanced royal elegance with approachable practicality. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and she wore minimal jewelry except for a sapphire engagement ring that caught the morning light. Beside her, William adjusted his tie and smiled at the growing crowd. Both had learned over the years that these community visits were among the most rewarding parts of their royal duties, offering genuine connections with people from all walks of life. The purpose of their visit was to celebrate the opening of a new community outreach program designed to support local families struggling with economic challenges. The initiative, developed in partnership with several charities, aimed to provide everything from job training to childcare support, creating a safety net for those who needed it most. For William and Catherine, this represented exactly the kind of work they were passionate about supporting. As they approached the community center, a modest brick building that had been lovingly renovated by volunteers, the crowd began to applaud. Local officials stepped forward to greet them, including the mayor, a cheerful woman in her 60s who had been instrumental in bringing the program to fruition. Her nervous energy was palpable as she prepared to guide the royal couple through their carefully planned schedule. The first stop was a tour of the facility's new training rooms, where local residents were learning valuable skills ranging from computer literacy to traditional crafts. In one room, a group of women were learning to operate modern sewing machines, their faces lighting up as they successfully completed their first projects. Catherine spent several minutes with each participant, asking about their goals and listening intently to their stories of resilience and determination. William gravitated toward a group of young men who were learning carpentry skills from a master craftsman who had volunteered his time. The informal atmosphere allowed for genuine conversation, and soon the prince was trying his hand at using traditional woodworking tools, much to everyone's delight. His willingness to participate, rather than simply observe, created an immediate sense of camaraderie that the cameras couldn't help but capture. The program coordinator, Sarah Mitchell, had been working tirelessly for months to make this day perfect. A social worker by training, she understood the transformative power of community support and had seen firsthand how programs like this could change entire family trajectories. As she guided the royal couple through each area, she couldn't help but feel proud of what their small community had accomplished. In the children's area, young mothers were participating in parenting workshops while their toddlers played in a carefully designed play space. The sight of families supporting each other, sharing experiences, and building friendships embodied everything the program hoped to achieve. Catherine knelt down to interact with several of the children, her natural warmth immediately putting both kids and parents at ease. The atmosphere was relaxed and genuine, far from the formal stuffiness that people sometimes associated with royal visits. William and Catherine had specifically requested a schedule that allowed for real interaction rather than rushed photo opportunities. They wanted to understand how the program was actually impacting lives, not just pose for pictures and move on. As they moved through the facility, stories began to emerge. There was Margaret, a 45-year-old single mother who had lost her job during the pandemic and was now learning digital skills that would help her find work in the modern economy. Her teenage daughter had been accepted into university, making Margaret the first person in her family to have a child pursue higher education. The pride in her voice was unmistakable as she shared her dreams for the future. Then there was David, a former construction worker whose back injury had forced him into early retirement. Rather than accepting defeat, he was learning accounting skills and hoped to start a small bookkeeping business serving other tradespeople. His determination inspired everyone who met him, including William, who spent extra time discussing the challenges faced by workers dealing with career-ending injuries. The morning continued with visits to a communal garden where families were learning to grow their own food, both as a cost-saving measure and a way to improve nutrition. Catherine, known for her own gardening interests, was particularly engaged with this aspect of the program. She knelt in the soil alongside participants, asking detailed questions about growing techniques and sharing tips from her own experience. Local news crews followed discreetly, capturing moments that would later be shared across social media and news broadcasts. But the real magic was happening in the unguarded moments between official stops, when William and Catherine could simply chat with people about their lives, their challenges, and their hopes for the future. The community center's kitchen was buzzing with activity as volunteers prepared lunch using ingredients from the garden and local suppliers. The menu featured traditional Lancashire dishes with healthy, modern twists, demonstrating how good nutrition could be both affordable and delicious. Several program participants had trained as community cooks, and they proudly presented their creations to the royal visitors. As the morning progressed, word spread through the surrounding neighborhoods that the royal couple was having such a positive experience that they might extend their visit beyond the scheduled time. People began gathering outside, hoping for a chance to see them when they eventually emerged. The energy was building toward something special, though no one could have predicted exactly what was about to unfold. The program's success was evident in the faces of everyone involved. This wasn't just about providing services. It was about rebuilding community connections and helping people rediscover their own capabilities. William and Catherine could see that this initiative was creating lasting change, the kind that would continue long after the cameras left and the headlines faded. Children who had initially been shy began opening up, sharing their artwork, and proudly showing off new skills they'd learned in the after-school programs. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and soon both William and Catherine were actively participating in activities, from helping with art projects to joining in simple games that had everyone laughing. The sense of genuine community was perhaps the most striking aspect of the entire visit. People from different backgrounds, ages, and circumstances were supporting each other in ways that felt both natural and transformative. It was exactly the kind of grassroots initiative that the royal couple believed could serve as a model for other communities facing similar challenges. As they prepared to move outside for the next portion of their visit, neither William nor Catherine could have imagined that their most memorable moment was still ahead of them, waiting in the form of an unexpected four-legged resident who was about to steal the show entirely. The carefully planned schedule was about to encounter a delightful disruption that would remind everyone present why the best moments in life are often the ones that happen completely by surprise. The Lancashire community had already exceeded every expectation, demonstrating the power of people coming together to support one another. But sometimes the most powerful connections happen in the most unexpected ways, and this particular day was about to provide a perfect example of that universal truth. Outside, unbeknownst to anyone inside the building, A small ambassador was waiting to make an introduction that would capture hearts far beyond the borders of Lancashire. As William and Catherine stepped outside the community center for the next phase of their visit, the Lancashire afternoon had settled into that perfect temperature that makes English summers so beloved. The crowd had grown considerably during their time inside, with families having walked from nearby neighborhoods and workers having taken early lunch breaks to catch a glimpse of the royal couple. The atmosphere was festive but respectful, with people maintaining a polite distance while clearly excited about the unexpected extension of the visit. The original schedule called for a brief walkabout through the town center, followed by a visit to a local school where children were waiting to present a special performance. However, as often happens during royal visits, the genuine warmth of the community and the obvious success of the programs they'd witnessed had inspired William and Catherine to linger longer than planned, much to the delight of their hosts and the growing crowd of well-wishers. Sarah Mitchell, the program coordinator, was beaming as she guided them toward the next destination. The morning had exceeded her wildest expectations, with both William and Catherine showing genuine interest in every aspect of the community initiative. Their questions had been thoughtful and their engagement authentic, exactly what she had hoped for, but hadn't quite dared to expect. As they walked along the main street, stopping frequently to shake hands and chat with locals, the Royal Protection Officers maintained their professional vigilance while trying to accommodate the increasingly informal nature of the visit. The balance between security and accessibility during royal walkabouts requires constant adjustment, and the team had learned to read the mood of both their charges and the crowd to ensure everyone remained safe while still allowing for meaningful interactions. Children pressed forward with homemade cards and drawings, their artwork depicting everything from the Union Jack to portraits of William and Catherine that bore the charming imperfection of young artists. Both royals accepted each offering with genuine appreciation, taking time to comment on specific details and making each child feel that their gift was truly special. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman who had lived in the area for 73 years, had positioned herself near the route specifically hoping for a chance to meet the couple. When Catherine stopped to speak with her, she shared stories about how the community had changed over the decades, painting a picture of resilience and adaptation that impressed both royals. Her sharp wit and obvious intelligence made their conversation extend well beyond the usual pleasantries. The local shop owners had decorated their storefronts with bunting and flowers, creating a festival atmosphere that transformed the modest commercial district into something magical. William paused outside the traditional fish and chips shop, whose owner proudly displayed a collection of photographs showing visits from various celebrities and dignitaries over the years. The hope in his eyes suggested he was already planning where a new photo might fit among his treasure collection. As they continued their impromptu tour, children began following at a respectful distance, creating an informal parade that grew with each block. Their excitement was infectious, and soon adults were smiling and waving just as enthusiastically. The formal boundaries that usually define royal visits were dissolving into something more organic and joyful. It was during this relaxed walkabout that they encountered Mrs. Eleanor Greenwood, a spry woman in her late 70s who had been watching the proceedings from her front garden gate. What made her different from other observers was the small, cream-colored Jack Russell Terrier sitting perfectly at her feet, wearing a tiny Union Jack bandana that she had sewn specifically for the occasion. The little dog, whose name was Biscuit, had been Mrs. Greenwood's constant companion since her husband passed away 3 years earlier. Despite his small size, Biscuit possessed an outsized personality and an uncanny ability to sense when people needed cheering up. He had become something of a neighborhood celebrity, known for his gentle interactions with children and his habit of somehow appearing whenever anyone in the area was having a difficult day. Mrs. Greenwood had been debating whether to bring Biscuit outside for the royal visit, worried that the crowd might overwhelm him or that his presence might be inappropriate. But Biscuit had made the decision for her, positioning himself by the gate and refusing to be coaxed inside despite the growing noise and activity. It was almost as if he understood that something special was happening and wanted to be part of it. As William and Catherine approached her section of the street, Mrs. Greenwood felt her heart racing with excitement and nervousness. She had lived through the reigns of three monarchs and had always held deep respect for the royal family, but she had never imagined she would have the opportunity to meet any of them personally. Biscuit seemed to sense her excitement, his tail beginning to wag more enthusiastically as the royal couple drew nearer. The moment that changed everything happened when Catherine noticed the small dog sitting so perfectly beside his owner. Her face immediately lit up with a genuine smile that had endeared her to people around the world. Without hesitation, she diverted from a planned route and walked directly toward Mrs. Greenwood's gate, with William following closely behind, his own expression showing amused resignation at his wife's predictable attraction to any animal within sight. Biscuit, for his part, seemed to understand immediately that these were important visitors. His behavior shifted into what Mrs. Greenwood privately called his gentleman mode, alert and friendly but perfectly mannered. His tail wagged steadily, but not frantically, and he remained seated despite his obvious excitement. The security team smoothly adjusted their positions to accommodate this unscheduled stop, while photographers and camera crews quickly repositioned themselves to capture what was clearly becoming a moment of genuine interest. The crowd around them seemed to hold its collective breath, sensing that something special was about to unfold. Catherine knelt down near the gate, bringing herself to eye level with Biscuit, who regarded her with the kind of serious consideration that only dogs can manage. "And who is this handsome gentleman?" she asked Mrs. Greenwood, her voice carrying the warm tone she always used when meeting new animals. The question seemed to break the spell of nervous tension, and Mrs. Greenwood found herself relaxing as she prepared to introduce her beloved companion. William, meanwhile, was observing the interaction with a fond expression of someone who had long ago accepted that any royal engagement involving his wife would inevitably include extended conversations with local pets. His own love of animals meant he was just as eager to meet Biscuit, but he was content to let Catherine take the lead in what was clearly about to become an extended introduction. The crowd around them had grown quiet, everyone straining to hear the conversation and witness this unscripted moment that was already feeling more genuine and memorable than any of the carefully planned elements of the visit. Children were being lifted on his shoulders for better views, while adults pulled out phones to capture what they instinctively knew would become a treasured memory. Mrs. Greenwood, drawing on decades of experience in graciously receiving visitors, began to tell the story of how Biscuit had come into her life. Her voice carried clearly in the still air, and her words painted a picture of companionship and mutual devotion that resonated with everyone listening. This was more than just a chance encounter. It was becoming a moment that captured something essential about the connections that make communities strong. Biscuit, seemingly aware that he had become the center of attention, maintained his perfect posture while his expressive eyes moved between Catherine and William, as if trying to decide which of these new friends he should greet first. The anticipation in the crowd was palpable, everyone waiting to see how this charming little dog would react to meeting royalty. The afternoon sun created perfect lighting for what was about to become one of the most photographed moments of the entire royal visit, though none of the participants could have known that yet. There were simply 3 people and 1 dog, meeting for the first time in a genuine moment of connection that was about to touch hearts far beyond the boundaries of Lancashire. The moment Catherine extended her hand toward the gate, Biscuit's entire demeanor shifted from polite attention to pure joy. His tail began wagging with such enthusiasm that his entire small body wiggled, yet he remained seated as Mrs. Greenwood had taught him, demonstrating the perfect balance between excitement and good manners that had made him beloved throughout the neighborhood. Mrs. Greenwood, still somewhat stunned by the reality of the situation, managed to find her voice. "This is Biscuit, Your Royal Highness. He's been my companion for 3 years now, ever since my Harold passed. I think he knows something special is happening today because he's been on his best behavior all morning." Catherine's smile widened as she listened, her eyes never leaving Biscuit's face. "May I say hello to him properly?" she asked, a question that sent a ripple of delighted murmurs through the crowd. The fact that she was asking permission, treating Mrs. Greenwood and Biscuit with the same courtesy she would show to any dignitary, struck everyone present as remarkably gracious. "Oh, Your Royal Highness, he would be absolutely thrilled," Mrs. Greenwood replied, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "He's very gentle, and he loves meeting new people. Though I must warn you, he's quite the character once he gets going." William stepped closer, his own interest clearly piqued by the small dog who was managing to maintain such perfect composure despite the extraordinary circumstances. "He's beautiful," he said to Mrs. Greenwood. "What breed is he?" "Jack Russell Terriers, sir. They're known for their intelligence and personality, and Biscuit has both in abundance. Sometimes I think he understands every word I say." As if to prove her point, Biscuit's ears perked up at the sound of his name, and he tilted his head in that universally endearing way that dogs have of showing they're listening intently. Catherine slowly reached through the gate, allowing Biscuit to sniff her hand before attempting any contact. This careful approach, clearly born from experience with animals, impressed Mrs. Greenwood and demonstrated the genuine respect both royals had for proper animal etiquette. Biscuit's investigation was thorough, but gentle, and within moments he was pressing his small head against Catherine's palm, clearly giving his approval for closer contact. The photographers surrounding them were having a field day, but their presence seemed to fade into the background as the genuine connection between the three humans and one very special dog took center stage. The clicking of cameras became a distant soundtrack to a moment that felt both intimate and universally relatable. "He's absolutely lovely," Catherine said, her voice soft with the kind of genuine affection that couldn't be faked. "You can tell he's very well cared for and loved." Her fingers gently scratched behind Biscuit's ears, and the little dog's eyes closed in blissful contentment. The sight of a future Queen of England focused entirely on making a small dog happy struck many observers as profoundly touching. William knelt down beside his wife, bringing himself to the same level so he could properly meet Biscuit as well. "Hello there, young man," he said in the gentle tone he used with children and animals. "You're quite the welcoming committee, aren't you?" Biscuit's response was to wag his tail even more enthusiastically while somehow managing to divide his attention equally between both royal visitors. Mrs. Greenwood watched this interaction with tears forming in her eyes. "He's never met anyone famous before," she told them, "but he seems to know you're special. Look how he's behaving, like a perfect little gentleman." The crowd around them had grown substantially, but the atmosphere remained respectful and warm. Children who had been restless earlier were now completely captivated by the unfolding scene, and even the adults seemed to forget about taking photos as they simply watched this genuine moment of connection unfold. Catherine looked up at Mrs. Greenwood. "Has he always been so well-behaved with strangers?" "Oh yes, Your Royal Highness. Biscuit has a gift for reading people. He seems to know exactly how to behave with everyone he meets. The children in the neighborhood adore him, and he's so gentle with them. But he also knows when someone needs quiet comfort. After Harold passed, there were days when I could barely get out of bed, and Biscuit would just sit with me as if he understood that sometimes presence is the best medicine." This revelation seemed to touch both William and Catherine deeply. They exchanged a quick glance that spoke to their shared understanding of loss and the healing power of animal companionship. Catherine's continued gentle attention to Biscuit took on an even deeper meaning as the crowd absorbed Mrs. Greenwood's words. "Animals have an incredible ability to sense what we need, don't they?" William observed. "We have dogs at home, and they seem to know our moods better than we do sometimes." This casual mention of their own pets created another point of connection, bringing the conversation down to the most human level possible. Biscuit, perhaps sensing the emotional weight of the conversation, chose that moment to do something that would become the highlight of the entire encounter. Standing up slowly, he approached the gate with obvious intention and, in a move that surprised everyone including Mrs. Greenwood, he sat up on his hind legs in a perfect begging position, his front paws dancing slightly as he sought to get closer to his new friends. The collective awe from the crowd was audible, and even the security team couldn't help but smile at the little dog's obvious desire for more attention. Catherine laughed with pure delight. "Oh my goodness, he's asking for cuddles, isn't he?" Mrs. Greenwood beamed with pride. "He only does that for people he really likes. It's his way of asking for a proper hug." Without hesitation, she opened the gate. "Would you like to give him a proper hello? He's absolutely clean and very gentle." The security team tensed slightly at this unexpected development, but both William and Catherine's body language made it clear they were completely comfortable with the situation. Catherine immediately reached for Biscuit, who seemed to understand exactly what was happening and moved toward her with careful enthusiasm. The moment Catherine lifted Biscuit into her arms was when the magic truly happened. The small dog settled against her immediately, his tail still wagging but his body relaxed and trusting. He looked up at her face with the kind of adoring expression that dogs reserve for their very favorite people. And Catherine's response was to gently hug him closer while speaking to him in the soft, affectionate tones that people use with beloved pets. William reached over to stroke Biscuit's head, and the little dog turned to acknowledge him while remaining perfectly content in Catherine's embrace. "He's got excellent taste in people," William joked, causing laughter to ripple through the surrounding crowd. The image of the two royals sharing attention with a small, contented dog created a picture of approachable humanity that would resonate with people around the world. For several minutes, the Prince and Princess of Wales were simply two people enjoying the company of a friendly dog and his devoted owner. The conversation flowed naturally, covering topics from pet care to community life, with Biscuit serving as the perfect icebreaker who had transformed a formal royal visit into something much more personal and meaningful. Mrs. Greenwood shared stories about Biscuit's adventures around the neighborhood, his favorite walking routes, and his uncanny ability to cheer up anyone having a difficult day. William and Catherine reciprocated with gentle questions and observations, creating the kind of genuine exchange that both sides would remember long after the cameras stopped rolling. The longer the interaction continued, the more comfortable everyone became, and the more apparent it was that this wasn't just a photo opportunity or polite obligation. These were people who genuinely enjoyed animals and understood the special bond between pets and their families. Biscuit, for his part, seemed to be thoroughly enjoying his moment in the spotlight, while maintaining the kind of perfect behavior that would make any pet owner proud. As the precious moments with Biscuit continued, it became increasingly clear that this encounter had evolved into something far more significant than anyone had anticipated. The little Jack Russell had somehow managed to create a bubble of pure joy and authenticity around himself and the royal couple, transforming what could have been a brief, polite exchange into something genuinely heartwarming and memorable. Catherine continued to hold Biscuit, who had settled into her arms as if he belonged there, occasionally looking up at her face with a kind of trusting expression that melted hearts throughout the growing crowd. His small paws rested gently on her arm, and he seemed completely at ease despite the unusual circumstances and the increasing number of people watching their interaction. "You know," Catherine said to Mrs. Greenwood, "there's something so therapeutic about spending time with dogs. They have this amazing ability to bring out the best in people and remind us what's really important in life." Her words carried the weight of genuine belief, and everyone listening could hear the sincerity in her voice. Mrs. Greenwood nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly what Biscuit has done for me. After Harold passed, I wasn't sure how I'd manage on my own. We've been married for 48 years, and suddenly the house felt so empty and quiet. But this little fellow," she gestured toward Biscuit, "he filled it with purpose again. Not the same kind of companionship, of course, but something equally precious." William, who had been quietly observing the interaction while keeping one hand gently stroking Biscuit's head, spoke up. It's remarkable how animals can help us heal, isn't it? They don't try to fix things with words or advice. They just offer their presence and unconditional love, and sometimes that's exactly what we need. The crowd around them had grown to include people from several blocks away, word having spread quickly through the small community that the royal couple was having an extended, informal interaction with a local resident and her dog. Yet despite the increased attention, the atmosphere remained respectful and warm, with everyone seeming to understand that they were witnessing something special that deserved to be treated with appropriate reverence. Local news crews had positioned themselves to capture every angle of the encounter, but even the most hardened journalists seemed to be affected by the genuine emotion of the moment. This wasn't just another royal photo opportunity. It was a real connection happening in real time, and its authenticity was undeniable. Biscuit, clearly comfortable with his new friends, chose that moment to demonstrate another of his charming behaviors. He gently nuzzled Catherine's cheek, causing her to laugh with pure delight. "Oh, he's giving me kisses," she exclaimed, and the joy in her voice was infectious. Even the security personnel, trained to maintain serious expressions, couldn't entirely suppress their smiles. "He only does that with people he's decided are family," Mrs. Greenwood explained, her voice thick with emotion. "In 3 years, I've seen him be friendly with many people, but he reserves those special gestures for the ones he truly trusts and loves." William shook his head in amazement. "We've been here for what, 10 minutes? And he's already decided we're worthy of the full Biscuit treatment." "Dogs are excellent judges of character," Mrs. Greenwood replied with obvious pride. "Biscuit has never been wrong about a person. If he loves you, it's because you're worth loving." The implications of this statement weren't lost on anyone present. In a world where royal interactions are often formal and carefully scripted, having a small dog serve as an independent character witness carried a surprisingly powerful message about the genuine nature of William and Catherine's personalities. Children in the crowd began calling out gentle questions about Biscuit, wanting to know his favorite games, his favorite treats, and whether he knew any tricks. Both Catherine and Mrs. Greenwood were happy to answer, creating an impromptu educational session about responsible pet ownership and the joys of animal companionship. "Does he know any tricks?" asked a young girl whose voice carried clearly across the crowd. Mrs. Greenwood's eyes twinkled with pride. "Show them your shake hands, Biscuit." Even while comfortable in Catherine's arms, the well-trained dog extended his paw toward William, who immediately understood and shook it solemnly. "A pleasure to meet you properly, sir," William said with mock formality, causing delighted laughter to ripple through the assembled crowd. "And watch this," Mrs. Greenwood continued. "Biscuit, whisper." The little dog immediately leaned toward Catherine's ear and made the softest little sound, as if he was sharing a secret. The crowd erupted in appreciative applause, and Catherine looked genuinely amazed. "That's incredible. How did you teach him that?" "Lots of patience and treats," Mrs. Greenwood admitted. "But he's naturally intelligent. Sometimes I think he teaches himself things just by watching and listening." As if to prove this point, Biscuit began a behavior that Mrs. Greenwood had never seen before. He looked seriously at William, then at Catherine, then carefully touched each of their faces with his paw in turn, as if he was blessing them or formally accepting them into his circle of approved humans. The gesture was so deliberate and unexpected that it left everyone momentarily speechless. "I've never seen him do that before," Mrs. Greenwood whispered in wonder. "It's like he knows this is a special moment, and he wants to mark it somehow." The photographers were having a field day, but more importantly, the genuine emotion of the moment was being captured not just in pictures but in the hearts of everyone present. Children were asking their parents if they could get dogs like Biscuit. Adults were wiping away tears, and even the most cynical observers couldn't help but be moved by the pure, uncomplicated joy of the encounter. Catherine looked at William with an expression that clearly communicated her reluctance to end this magical interlude. "I could stay here all afternoon," she said softly, and everyone could tell she meant it. "So could I," William agreed. "This has been the highlight of our entire visit, hasn't it?" Mrs. Greenwood beamed with pride and joy. "You've made an old woman very happy, and you've made Biscuit feel like the most important dog in the world. This is a day we'll both remember for the rest of our lives." As the interaction continued, more stories emerged. Mrs. Greenwood shared how Biscuit had helped her reconnect with neighbors, how his daily walks had introduced her to people she might never have met otherwise, and how his playful nature had brought laughter back in her life when she thought she might never laugh again. The royal couple listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and sharing their own observations about the healing power of pets. The conversation revealed depths of understanding and empathy that went far beyond what anyone might have expected from a chance encounter during a royal walkabout. Biscuit, meanwhile, continued to charm everyone with his perfect behavior and obvious contentment. He had found his moment in the sun and was making the most of it, displaying all his best qualities while somehow seeming to understand that he was representing not just himself, but all the wonderful pets who bring joy to their human families. The afternoon was becoming one of those rare occasions when everything seemed to align perfectly. The weather, the mood, the people involved, and, most importantly, the genuine connections being formed. It was the kind of moment that reminds everyone why human-animal bonds are so special and why simple kindness can have such powerful effects. As word continued to spread through social media and news networks, people around the world were beginning to fall in love with a small dog from Lancashire who had somehow managed to steal the spotlight from royalty simply by being his authentic, loving self. The story was already becoming something larger than the sum of its parts, touching hearts far beyond those who witnessed it firsthand. As the magical encounter with Biscuit gradually drew toward its natural conclusion, the atmosphere around the small gathering had transformed into something that felt more like a community celebration than a formal royal visit. The barriers between royalty and residents had dissolved completely, replaced by the kind of genuine human connection that transcends social boundaries and reminds everyone present of their shared humanity. Catherine reluctantly began the process of saying goodbye to Biscuit, but not before asking Mrs. Greenwood if she could take one more photo with him. "Would it be all right if we had an official photograph together? I'd love to have something to remember this perfect moment." The request was so heartfelt and genuine that Mrs. Greenwood felt tears welling up in her eyes as she nodded her enthusiastic agreement. The resulting photograph would later become one of the most widely shared and beloved images of any royal visit. It captured Catherine holding Biscuit close while he looked up at her with complete adoration, William's hand gently stroking the dog's head, and Mrs. Greenwood beaming with joy and pride in the background. But more than just documenting the moment, the image somehow managed to convey the pure emotion and authentic connection that had made the encounter so special. William reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone, something that surprised the security team, but delighted the crowd. "Mrs. Greenwood, would you mind if I took a quick photo to share with our children? They're going to be so jealous that we met Biscuit without them." The casualness of this request, the fact that he wanted to share this moment with his own family, struck everyone as remarkably down-to-earth and relatable. "Of course, sir. Biscuit would be honored to be in a photograph for the little princes and princess." Mrs. Greenwood's voice carried a mixture of pride and disbelief that this extraordinary day was actually happening to her and her beloved companion. As William took several photos, Biscuit seemed to pose naturally, as if he understood the significance of the moment. His tail continued to wag gently, and his expression remained alert and happy, creating the perfect pictures that William would indeed later share with George, Charlotte, and Louis, who would immediately declare that they absolutely must meet Biscuit someday. The time had come for Catherine to reluctantly return Biscuit to his owner, but she did so with obvious reluctance. "Thank you so much for letting us spend this time with him," she told Mrs. Greenwood. "He's absolutely wonderful, and you've clearly done an amazing job raising him. He's a credit to you and to dogs everywhere." Biscuit seemed to sense that the special time was ending, but rather than appearing disappointed, he gracefully transitioned back to Mrs. Greenwood while maintaining his friendly attention toward his new royal friends. His perfect behavior continued right until the end, cementing his reputation as a true gentleman among dogs. Mrs. Greenwood, overwhelmed with emotion, managed to find words for what had become the experience of a lifetime. "Your Royal Highnesses, you've given an old woman and her dog the most precious gift imaginable. You've treated us like we matter, like we're important, and you've made us feel so special. This kindness, this genuine attention, it means more than I could ever express." William and Catherine exchanged glances that spoke to their shared understanding of how meaningful this encounter had been for all of them. "Mrs. Greenwood," Catherine said gently, "the pleasure has been entirely ours. Meeting you and Biscuit has been the absolute highlight of our day. Thank you for sharing him with us and for reminding us of what's truly important in life." The crowd, which had remained respectfully quiet during the farewells, erupted in warm applause as the royal couple began to step away from the gate. But their departure wasn't quick or formal. They took time to wave to everyone present, and both William and Catherine turned back multiple times to wave specifically at Biscuit, who sat perfectly beside Mrs. Greenwood while wagging his tail in response. As they walked away, continuing their planned route through the community, the conversations around them had shifted entirely. Instead of formal discussions about programs and initiatives, people were sharing their own pet stories, talking about the healing power of animal companionship, and marveling at how a small dog had managed to create such a perfect moment of connection and joy. The news crews immediately began packaging their stories, but even the most experienced journalists seemed somewhat stunned by what they had witnessed. This wasn't just a cute animal story. It was something that spoke to deeper truths about compassion, authenticity, and the ways that unexpected moments can reveal the best aspects of human nature. Social media exploded almost immediately. The hashtag BiscuitMeetsRoyalty began trending within hours, accompanied by hundreds of photos and videos taken by crowd members from every possible angle. But more than just sharing images, people began sharing their own stories about beloved pets, about moments of unexpected kindness, and about the ways that animals bring communities together. Mrs. Greenwood found herself briefly overwhelmed by the attention that followed. Local news stations wanted interviews, national papers called for quotes, and her quiet street became a temporary pilgrimage site for people wanting to catch a glimpse of the famous Biscuit. Through it all, she maintained the same grace and warmth that had impressed the royal couple, always emphasizing how honored she felt and how proud she was of Biscuit's behavior. Biscuit, for his part, seemed to take his sudden fame in stride. He continued his daily routines, greeting neighbors with his usual enthusiasm and maintaining his reputation as the neighborhood's friendliest and most well-behaved dog. If anything, the attention seemed to bring out even more of his natural charm, as if he understood that he now had a special responsibility to represent the very best of canine behavior. The community center's programs received an unexpected boost in attention and support following the visit. The genuine enthusiasm that William and Catherine had shown, combined with the viral nature of the Biscuit encounter, brought national attention to the important work being done in Lancashire. Donations poured in, volunteer applications increased, and other communities began inquiring about how to replicate similar programs in their own areas. Mrs. Greenwood decided to use her unexpected platform to advocate for animal rescue organizations and elderly pet adoption programs. She began accepting speaking engagements at local events, always accompanied by Biscuit, where she shared their story while highlighting the important work done by animal welfare groups. Her message was simple but powerful. Animals have an incredible capacity to heal, connect, and inspire, and every community benefits when people and pets support each other. The ripple effects continued for months afterward. Children's books were written about Biscuit's royal encounter, with proceeds donated to animal charities. Local artists created paintings and sculptures commemorating the moment. The community garden where Catherine had spent time earlier in the day was expanded and renamed the Biscuit Community Garden, with a small memorial plaque recognizing the power of unexpected friendships to bring people together. Most importantly, the story became a touchstone for discussions about what makes moments truly memorable and meaningful. In an age of carefully crafted social media images and scripted public interactions, the genuine emotion and spontaneous joy of William and Catherine's encounter with Biscuit served as a reminder that the best moments in life are often the ones that happen completely naturally. The royal couple themselves referenced the encounter in subsequent speeches and interviews, using it as an example of the incredible work being done in communities across the country and the importance of a human-animal bond. They established a small annual award for community programs that use animal therapy or pet companionship to support vulnerable populations, with the first award going to a program in Lancashire that was inspired directly by their visit. Years later, when people recalled the royal visit to Lancashire, they rarely talked about the speeches, the ribbon cuttings, or the formal presentations. Instead, they remembered a small cream-colored dog who had somehow managed to steal the show simply by being himself, and two future monarchs who had shown that genuine kindness and authentic connection are perhaps the most powerful tools in any royal arsenal. Biscuit lived for many more happy years, always maintaining his role as the neighborhood's unofficial ambassador of goodwill and continuing to demonstrate the special magic that happens when love, kindness, and authentic connection come together in perfect harmony. His legacy lived on not just in the memories of those who witnessed his royal encounter, but in the countless acts of kindness and connection that his story inspired in communities around the world. The lesson was simple but profound. Sometimes the most meaningful moments happen when we least expect them, and the connections that touch our hearts the deepest are often the ones that remind us of our shared humanity and the universal language of love that transcends all boundaries. In a world that can often feel divided and complex, a small dog named Biscuit had managed to create a moment of pure joy that united people across all backgrounds in the simple pleasure of witnessing genuine kindness and authentic human connection.